Hi, everybody. Julianna Forlano here. You're watching Act Now. Thanks for being here. I've got what I think is a fabulous show. I'm going to be talking about, we're going to be doing the headlines, but really we're going to be focusing on one major headline. Do you trust Politico? Is Politico a place where you go to get your news and trust what they say? Or are they just slightly corporate as well? We'll be taking a look at a story about the mayor-elect, Eric Adams, mayor-elect of New York City. And I'm going to point out a few things. And then after the headline segment is over, Jocelyn McCurdy-Keats comes on to join us to give Bell Hooks a tribute. Bell Hooks, obviously author, professor, and a profound influencer of today's culture. And we lost her. She died. So it's pretty sad. Especially since she is a person and her writings actually changed my life. So I look forward to talking with you about that, presenting a couple of things I found for you in tribute to her. All that and just pretty much all that. So stay with us. Don't forget to put your I'm loving having John Carlo in the background telling me what's going on in the comments section of YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching. And I look forward to our chat back and forth on there. Thanks so much. First up, the headlines. Hey, everybody. Happy to be here with you to do these headlines. So check it out. Okay. So on Politico, I want to go over what happened in Politico. Politico was reporting that the next mayor of New York City, head of cops in New York City, wants to save the city from the evils of olive oil. First of all, if you are going to get a headline in New York City, this is going to offend every Italian who lives in New York City, which is everyone who lives in New York City. I mean, if you kind of live there, you've sort of become a little bit Italian in that city. Check it out. And if you don't know why I'm talking about, look, who gets this reference? The Genco Olive Oil Company. That's the company of olive oil that Vito Corleone ran when he rose to power in the movie The Godfather. Olive oil is very important to New York City. All right, so that catchy headline goes on to have a catchy story that's kind of interesting. So let's go through it together. I think that'll be kind of fun today. All right. A few American politicians have embraced the role of public health ambassador as comfortably as Mike Bloomberg. Just want to add, he was a Republican when he first got into office as mayor. Then he became an independent while he was in office for God knows what reason. I'm not going to dig that up for you. Anyway, he banned smoking in bars and restaurants, outlawed trans fats, unsuccessfully pushed to restrict soda size. Remember, everyone thinks he is a Democrat now because he switched parties yet again, and he ran as a Democrat in our last presidential election. So, already right off the top paragraph of this, they are tying restrictions, rules, forcing you to do certain things for your health to the Democrats. I just thought I'd point that out. The former New York City mayor, they're talking, of course, about Bloomberg, was so content in that role, he performed in a charity show, Mary Poppins, to spoof his nanny personality. So he embraced what the Republicans called him, nanny state. Now, maybe he just didn't want to pay for some of the health conditions that are caused by some of the overuse of certain substances that are found in our food these days. Anyway, now New Yorkers have chosen another wellness zealot. That's what they're calling Eric Adams. Now, I'm not like pro Adams. Here he is. I'm not pro Adams. I'm not anti Adams. I'm just figuring out what the deal is with Adams. But I thought this gets interesting. So let's go in there. Following 8 years of a mayor who largely avoided the thorny intersection of health mandates and personal choice. Health mandates? Smoking outside is not necessarily a mandate. It makes a choice and it creates a boundary so that people who want to have clean lungs inside have the right to do that. Good Lord, health mandates. Anyway, thorny intersection of health mandates and personal choice until confronted with the COVID-19 pandemic. That is de Blasio. Mayor-elect Eric Adams, a former NYPD captain, traded jelly donuts for kale smoothies. Good Lord, did he say he used to eat jelly donuts? Or is that just like, is that a thing? Or cops are still eating jelly donuts? That's still like a meme. Anyway, he had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 5 years ago, and then he reversed his vision loss and nerve damage and shed 35 pounds and anointed himself a spokesperson for a plant-based lifestyle. Did he anoint himself a spokesperson for a plant-based lifestyle, or did he just tell you the good news about what happens when you change from the capitalist, the capitalist pushed food program that we have in the United States, capitalism pushed big agribusiness food system, to something that's maybe a little more in line with what your body would prefer. Just saying. As he prepares to take over City Hall, a job that comes with a national bully pulpit, he stands to turn passion into policy. And that's where this gets interesting. We can save more lives. This is a quote with plant-based diet. If people would only realize they are enslaved to fats, oil, sugar, and things that are killing their body. Enslaved is a very interesting word choice. Definitely addicted, because those foods are made to be addictive, and they are addictive. Sugar is an addictive substance. Sugar mixed with fat is an addictive substance. We're going to talk about that a little later in this segment. But he was in a short film, which you can go check out, produced by Forks Over Knives, which is the company that promotes a whole foods diet. Here he is. All right. In electing Adams, a fit 61-year-old who once boasted, quote, "I don't have a six-pack, I have a case," voters chose someone who used his public perch as Brooklyn borough president to proselytize a vegan diet. It's not a big surprise that he's still talking about being a vegan. We knew, and we voted for him, or at least some people voted for him. Anyway, he showed off his intricate smoothie recipe, an office-based stepper for TV cameras. I don't understand. Is he being shamed here? It certainly seems like the tone is health shaming. I know there's a fat shaming thing, but there's also a health shaming thing. Oh, goodness gracious. Apparently, he spearheaded a plant-based diet program at a leading city hospital, authored a memoir called Healthy at Last, part cookbook intended to overhaul the diets of its readers. Even olive oil, which he dubbed liquid fat, didn't escape Adams' scorn. Now, this is where I have to disagree, okay, as an Italian American with, let's call it, olive oil affinity. Olive oil is good for you if you eat it raw. You can't deep fry stuff in it. It oxidizes, and that's a problem for your innards. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. You can Google it, but I disagree that it is literally liquid fat. Yes, that is true, but it's not. You need fat in your diet in order to have, a brain that works. So, and other parts too. So I disagree there, but yes, you're not supposed to fry it or heat it up over a certain temperature, because that does make it bad for you. Anyway, that is just like health science. I don't understand why the big upset with him about wanting to be healthy. Adams, a Democrat, brought his devotion to the mayoral campaign trail, vowing to fund doulas for pregnant women, because the first classroom is in the mother's womb. That's a quote of his, meditating on stage before televised debates and sharing his election night victory stage with a doctor who specializes in past life regression and Reiki. All right, so they're painting him as like a crystal guy, just like they painted Marianne Williamson as the crystal lady. Everyone knows I'm a fan, and I've had her on the show several times. I just think that the way they're talking about that, okay, I love the idea, first of all, of funding doulas for pregnant women. I could have used a doula. It would have been wonderful to have one. If you're not familiar with what a doula does, it's basically someone who helps you through your birth, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who is not your partner or potentially husband who may just pass out or has literally no clue what you're going through. Someone who's not your mom, someone who is a person who's been there before, perhaps themselves or with other mothers, and understand what you're going through and can actually advocate for you while you are, under contractions at the hospital. I think I've told this story before. I had to advocate for myself while I was in labor with my butt hanging out. It was insane that I had to fight a healthcare system during. Whole nother story. I think I've told it in another show. You can check it out. Yeah, sharing his election night, but meditating before televised debates. Don't we want somebody who meditates, who's chill and coming from that middle ground? Someone who wants to support mothers. I mean, the past life regression thing, I'm not going to comment on, but I believe mentioning it is, a lot of people believe that a human being died and then rose from the dead. And, a lot of people believe a lot of stuff. They don't get made fun of like this. So that's very interesting. Okay. I'm just talking about political. I don't necessarily support or not support Eric Adams. Anyway, much of the time, the incoming mayor, who is Black, which is weird because they put up pictures, you would think, okay, focuses on racial disparities in medicine. He likened soul food to what he called, quote, slave food on a recent podcast, and pledged to build clinics in low-income neighborhoods that lack access to top-tier hospitals. How interesting. Isn't that interesting? In New York City, the mayor has pledged to build clinics in low-income neighborhoods that lack access to top-tier hospitals. Now, why do some of these neighborhoods lack access to top-tier hospitals? Well, I'll give you one example. Back when Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor, he basically closed. That was the time during which he just allowed buildings that were hospitals like St. Vincent's to be closed, to be rezoned for high-end condos. That's what happened under Mike Bloomberg, the Republican / independent candidate / now Democrat / opportunist rich guy. Who has done some decent things, but it doesn't cover up for the other stuff. Anyway, the district attorney at that time opened an investigation, given that there was ample evidence to suggest that the administrators of St. Vincent's Hospital, which had been open at the time for 161 years, had actually tanked and mismanaged the hospital so much that there was such debt, and the debt is what drove it out of business. And then, of course, that land, it was the beautiful old building was taken down, and that land was, they put up a big high-end condo where the AIDS epidemic, where people, the AIDS epidemic was like ground zero for the AIDS epidemic. I mean, would you want to live in a place where people were treated so horrendously and unfairly? Anyway, the hospital itself did a good job, I believe, in that was the only place who was doing treatments, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, I just think that's fairly, that's a big deal to have him say something like that, because the real estate industry is an enormous industry. It's a very powerful lobby, very powerful group in New York City, possibly the most powerful one. So I just thought, it just kind of stuck in my mind that he wants to do that. He also said he wants public hospitals to double as hubs for social services. That's a great idea. He also promised to clean up city-funded food. Will he do it? That would be amazing. So no more processed school lunches, no more sugary drinks for public hospital patients, or junk foods for detainees in city jails, he told Politico in an interview last year. You should not be leaving jail unhealthy. You should not be in a homeless shelter where I am feeding you on a taxpayer dime and I'm feeding you food like chicken nuggets. Very, very interesting. I am absolutely thrilled with this. I'm taking off this piece, putting on this piece. I'm moving ahead. All right. I got a little something to say here. So he's talking about school lunches at the, lunches at the prisons, making them healthy. How very interesting is that? Does he realize that's very anti-corporate stance he is taking? I mean, people have been out there saying, doesn't he have better things to do with his time? Is he the food police or a food dictator or something? But I really like how he's going to put healthy food in public schools. I mean, Politico is not necessarily known for its pro-people, anti-corporate interest leanings. And they clearly did not highlight what I'm about to highlight, which is this is kind of anti-corporatist, what he's doing. In my opinion, what he's doing is a Democrat doing Democratic things like opening community healthcare centers. I don't care if he knows anything about healthy food or not. You know, he can hire someone who knows what they're doing to plan those kids' menus. Because right now, the kids are getting served sugar and fat and more sugar and fat in public school. And then they act crazy and all wound up and totally nutters because they're all sugared up. And then they're punished for their behavior. And many times these days, kids who get punished from public school are sent to juvenile delinquency centers. And even the cops come to get them. They're not just sent to the principal's office like they were back in the day. And not only that, but kids form their eating tastes and habits very early. And of course, here we have it. McDonald's knows this. This image you can't see very well, but it says at the bottom, I wish we could scroll it up a little bit. I don't know if we can, Giancarlo. We're teaming up to save school lunch is what it says at the bottom here. Hold on, maybe if I put it like that. There it is. We're teaming up to save school lunch. They want to team up to save, quote unquote, school lunch, because the earlier you get those kids addicted to your addictive product, that's your, those are your customers of the future. That's why they're teaming up to save school lunch. On the one hand, libertarians will bust my hump and say that it's wonderful that corporations are doing charitable work and they should do this and the government should stay out of it. But don't forget, the government is going to be paying for this anyway. It's basically a tax dollar money laundering scheme because the tax write-off McDonald's will get for this program. I'm sure Ronald McD is not doing it for love and for free, not over at corporate. They're not. They're doing it to addict your kids early. The ratio of sugar and fat they use to make their products is practically irresistible to your brain. More signals the brain, more, which fits in perfectly with capitalism that indoctrinates our whole society with the disease of more. And McDonald's, by the way, is one of the greatest contributors to the burning of the Amazon rainforest. In fact, investigations by the Business and Human Rights Resource Center reveal that McDonald's, Burger King, I don't know where we are with the images, Giancarlo. Do we have one? What's the next one? Yeah, there you go. McDonald's, Burger King, KFCs, and companies in the UK are supplied with meat from illegal deforestation areas in the Amazon rainforest, not just the legal ones. The Amazon fires that are being set there, close to 2.5 million hectares of land, which is an area larger than Wales, was burned in the Brazilian Amazon in August. Not over the last 10 years, not over the last 5 years, in 1 month. And according to data published by the same study group, the Brazilian agency responsible for monitoring forests from space was able to see just exactly the enormous amount of devastation there. Fires were deliberately started by farmers and land grabbers. And of course, this is being encouraged by fascist President Bolsonaro and his calls to open the Amazon to agriculture. Brazil's natural ecosystems are basically being decimated to produce beef and another crop called soya. And McDonald's and KFC and Burger King are sourcing vast amounts of these goods. Both Burger King and McDonald's buy Brazilian beef. All three companies serve chicken fed on a diet of soya, also grown on rainforest land. Now, I've been studying, look how beautiful it is. I've been studying beef being raised on the rainforest for, I don't know, the last couple decades. And I think it's 3 years. One piece of land can that was formerly rainforest land can support 3 years of cows. And that's it until it's totally exhausted because there's not a lot of soil in the rainforest. Fascinating. So it's all a big nothing for your burger. Anyway, every person on Earth depends on the Amazon to regulate our climate, if you didn't know. The Amazon forest sucks carbon from the air, stores it in billions of trees, produces what's called a flying river of water vapor that impacts weather in other countries and other continents. So this is a global issue. It brings rain to otherwise dry regions of South America. It's home to hundreds of indigenous people. There's a staggering diversity of plant and animal species. And basically, without it, we're facing bigger droughts, bigger famines, heat waves, and storms like the ones we're seeing across the country here and across the earth, in addition to the loss of one of the most magical places on earth. And that would be reason to both stop eating your hamburger and put pressure on these places. And like what Eric Adams might do because he believes in health, leverage some of the big government agencies that provide food to people to not provide it from these corporations and not provide unhealthy options to people. All of that money could be going to the people who are sustainably planting local vegetables in New York State. The school lunch adjustments could have really a global impact. So I don't know if he's doing this on purpose. I don't know if Eric Adams is like, hey, I'm an anti-globalist, anti-corporatist. I'd like to fix the climate change, but his health kick would actually do that, you know. By the way, I wouldn't doubt that squeezing down the public school budget and subsequently the school lunch budget is a plan to allow space for corporations like McDonald's to step in and say, oh, look, we're helping with the lunch. The system could definitely use some adjusting. I'm just saying. Very interesting. Interesting stuff. Well, just finally, that article tried to connect him and his health kick to health mandates and control. They are actually putting forth the narrative of the right wing about the Democratic Party and Democrats. And he's just saying, hey, I think we should all be healthier. And health insurance and healthcare would actually cost less if we all were healthier. And I think supporting that is a great idea. Isn't that what progressives should be behind? When I brought this up to a friend, she's like, isn't Politico a kind of left-leaning? I'm like, yeah, they might be sort of socially left-leaning, but this article reeks of corporate friendliness by just kind of smearing this guy's, the potential for what this guy stands for. I'm Julianna Forlano. These have been the one headline. Usually it's the headlines, but I thought I really wanted to hit this one headline and hit it hard for you. Coming up next, we have got Jocelyn McCurdy-Keats is joining us to do not a tribute to one of our favorite authors, one of our favorite public intellectuals. Bell Hooks passed away on the 15th of December, and we're going to talk about what she meant to us, so stay tuned. Legendary author, activist, professor Bell Hooks passed away on the 15th of December. Bell Hooks, you'll see like a lot of books behind me, and I have moved many times, and every time I move, the books get culled, and they get culled and culled and culled. And when I heard Bell Hooks had passed away, I knew exactly where to go to get one of the many books of hers that I have on my shelf, Wounds of Passion. This is her book about her own life, her own writing life. And she has meant a great deal to me. She's also meant a great deal to women across this country and people of color and any number of other groups. Joining me now is my partner in crime for these second halves of the show, Jocelyn McCurdy-Keats. Jocelyn, how are you?
Hi, Juliana. Yeah, I wish we were talking about happier things, but
I mean, her work is so fundamentally powerful that it is kind of a happy thing. It's unfortunate that she passed away, but if I feel like when I die, I'd like to be like, okay, I did the thing that I came here to do as a soul. You know what I mean? And I feel like she's
Yes.
one of those people who cannot
No,
mistake that her mission was accomplished.
You know what? When you put it like that, that is a happier way of looking at it for sure. She's just, I mean, it's really interesting to see, especially again, you know, women and women of color posting about bell hooks today, because it's just, she has such a powerful impact on people. Like, I'm sorry, am I echoing?
No, a little bit, but it's okay.
Let me turn my volume down. Yeah, you know, there are lots of great writers, but there aren't necessarily people who every time you read one of their books, you walk away changed. And she is that type of writer, because she is not afraid to bridge the personal and the political in a way that, like, I don't know that many people were doing before she started writing her books about everything. It's like,
yeah, look at all these books. Look, I went to get her pictures of some of her books, and I couldn't get pictures of them all. They wouldn't see that last one. They wouldn't load fast enough for me to get the images for you all.
Yeah.
What was the first bell hooks book that you ever came across? How did you come across?
So mine is probably pretty stereotypical, all about love, but
that makes sense.
Right.
Actually, when I was, yeah. How did you find it? Where were you like in the?
I think it's, she's one of those writers that, like, if you're a little bit into this sort of anti-capitalist psychology thing, or I don't know,
anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, anti-racist. Right. She had a way of saying it very succinctly what she was all about.
And she's, she was sort of everywhere. I started reading her books in my early 20s, and it's just like,
see, now I had a completely different experience. I went through an entire college career. I have a philosophy degree. They were just, when I was in college, they were like, we're building a women's studies building. We might have a women's studies. They didn't have that. And in addition to that, they didn't have, it's not like her work was folded into what I would call men's studies, which is philosophy, a history of men's thoughts from Europe. You want to think about men from Europe, so I did enjoy The Life of the Mind at that point. And I came across her because I worked in publishing, and I worked for Routledge, which is academic publishing. And we published her book, which was Where We Stand, Class Matters. And I was reading it for my work, and I'm like, my mind is blown. Who is this woman? And I wanted all of the books, which when you work in publishing, it's pretty easy to get your hands on. I got the whole author library, which is amazing. And, I had not heard anyone speak that way in my entire life. And she put so many things into context.
I do think I agree with that. I think that's one of when I think about bell hooks, like, she's one of those people who, she doesn't really belong to any other category. And she herself rejected those categories. She's like, okay, sure, this might look like a book about race or a book about class or a book about relationships, but I'm going to take its implications everywhere. We're going to talk about how capitalism shows up in the home. We're going to talk about how white supremacy shows up in relationships. Like, she just wasn't afraid to fall into those categories set by old white dudes, as you put it. Like, because I felt that way in college too, right? You're taking these classes. It's like, now we will talk about John Locke. Now we will talk
I think I have that book.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I guess. But in the meantime, there are all
if those guys were the first dudes to ever think that fascinating thought about, you know what I mean? Like, well, come on.
Right.
Meanwhile, their wives are like raising their kids and doing all the action that you have to do in the world. Anyway,
yeah, or writing just as prolifically. I mean, I was shocked when I grew up and started reading about the personal lives of these men, and realizing that, shocker, a lot of their female partners were writers, intellectuals, first readers and editors of their work, and yet we don't hear about them. Why?
Mrs. Locke has not made it. No, Mrs. Wittgenstein, Mrs. Plato has not made it into the yeah. Well, it's interesting, the love book that you mentioned. So last night, as I was preparing to my thoughts about our segment here, I got to watch like 15 videos of her speaking, and I suggest everyone go out and do that. There was a beautiful talk where she and Cornell West spoke at the New School. I watched that whole thing, but I did watch kind of an older piece where she talks about the intersection of love, and she talks about American society. And I grabbed some clips for you, Jocelyn. So you just basically came across her stuff like in the bookstore, just so I'm clear.
Just, I mean, she's one of those people that's frequently quoted and referred to. So, when All About Love, I think I have no idea, but I suspect that All About Love is one of her better selling books because she's written 30 and they're all good. They're all knockouts, which is very rare. I find personally that you get really hyped up about one writer or thinker, and then their other stuff is kind of meh. But that's not true with her. I mean, her books about, I honestly, she's like, I think I've read like 5 or 6. It's, she has so many, but Communion is also very good. The one that is addressed specifically to men, hold on, I wrote it down. Where is it? Oh, The Will to Change. That is a really good one. If you want to talk about toxic masculinity specifically, that again also blew my mind because she also writes from a place of sympathy and empathy, which is rare if you're reading. She doesn't have an axe to grind.
Actually, that really comes through in this interview piece because she talks about how she talks about she quotes Martin Luther King, and she talks about the difficulty that people of color have in having to forgive these aggressors and transgressors, but how important and absolutely necessary it is, lest that I guess lack of forgiveness will enslave you internally and I guess externally. Let's take a look. This is a really interesting. Do you mind, Jocelyn?
No, of course not. I would love that.
Videos. So this is where she's talking about our personal attitudes about love and how they intersect with life. Giancarlo, this is the first one from the video.
Our personal attitudes about love are tied to our culture's politics, to what our nation tells us is important. I mean, that chapter on greed where I talk about the fact that one of the wonderful aspects of love is giving, and that as we give to others, we grow in our capacity to connect. I mean, the first major chapter in the book says, how do we define love? How can we know love in a culture where most of us don't have a sense of what it is? In fact, the book is dedicated to my ex-boyfriend, the younger man that you just evoked, because we had these continual fights and are still having them after 8 years. We broke up 5 years ago, where we kept talking about, well, what is love? And it was clear that he felt often that he didn't know what I was talking about. And then I talked to other women who say the same thing about the partners in their lives, men who say, well, I don't know what love is. So I try to...
Which sort of echoes that idea that gender does make a difference in the way women look at love and men look at love.
Well, I think what most men feel, they're not looking at love at all. And so part of what the book tried to say is perhaps if we had common definitions, if we started out from a common point, what would it mean for us as a nation to start off feeling that love is important for males as much as it is for females? Because deeply embedded in our national psyche is an assumption that love can't be important to men. How will men go and fight wars if they are dedicated to love? And until we begin to recognize that love has to be essential to men if we're going to end sexism, if men are going to reclaim the spaces where they can be connected to their feelings, to their fathers, to their mothers in different kinds of ways. But partially the book says romantic love has been the myth that has, as the only love that really matters. It challenges that notion. That's one of the new visions, that it says the foundation of all our love, like the foundation of a house, there are certain principles that will make you have a sturdy house. And those principles are the same irrespective of the kind of house you're building. The same is true of love. And we have been a culture that has over-valorized romantic love, that no matter how horrible and miserable your life has been as a kid or as a teenager, someday you're going to find this love and it's going to come into your life and it's going to change all of that. And many of us found that that was not so. And I think a lot of men felt that one day they'll grow up and they'll be humanized by a woman or a partner giving them love, rather than thinking about what will it mean, what will it take for me to become a loving person. Well, I mean, I use a kind of M. Scott Peck, I love his
you
work.
quote him a number of times.
I know it probably offends a lot of people that this intellectual is quoting M. Scott Peck, but I felt that his books, I love mass literature. I love the fact that we can have books like The Road Less Traveled, like Thomas More's Care of the Soul, that reach out with broad intellectual concepts to a wide audience. And I particularly take his definition of love as the will to nurture one's own and another's spiritual growth, and link it to Eric Fromm saying, love is a combination of care, knowledge, responsibility, commitment, and trust. Because one of the things that's happened in our culture is we equate love primarily with care. And that's why we can say parents who brutally beat their kids but who still love them. Because I look at my own childhood and I say in the book again and again, my parents cared for me deeply. But they also wounded me in ways that were violating, wounded my spirit. And I think that I would be a different person today had they not given me care. Because I've met lots of adults who didn't get care, but I did not feel loved.
You talk about how
Fascinating.
Well, and it's, I love that we're talking about all about love, because she does talk about women in this society are taught to equate our personhood as coming to fruition through a romantic relationship or even like becoming a mother, where she's right. Men are taught to fight wars and run companies and earn income. And like, it creates this incredible spiritual mismatch in interpersonal relationships. And that doesn't come out of a society as capitalistic and racialized and gender segregated as ours on accident. Like, it's all related.
No, it's all also by design. I mean,
Yeah.
everything I've seen, I mean, we did so much this year. And as we close in on the end of the year, we did the anniversary show for Occupy Wall Street. It was, I think, a decade since Occupy Wall Street, and we talked a lot on that show about the actual feeling in the park, in Zuccotti Park. And it was a feeling of solidarity and unity. And wherever I find that feeling, I find that, the forces that she often names, capitalism, patriarchy, all of those things, racism, the forces that would forward those things are always trying to clamp down on the springing forth of the natural unity and solidarity between people. That's why they try to break up unions. That's why they try to, and these unions and Occupy Wall Street are made of fallible human beings, but that didn't stop sort of the vibe of love from coming out of there. And those places, it's just so interesting. I was doing a research about the segment I did right before this, and I know you were watching, Jocelyn. It was a segment about health and healthcare, and so I was watching a lot of Marianne Williamson's videos of what she said when she was running for office, and one of the things she said about healthcare was, we have a sick care system, you get sick, and then she mentioned, actually, I don't want to get off topic here, but it's like a 1-minute clip. Let's play that clip, Giancarlo, if you have it, because she actually talks about that. And then she mentions love as what we should be basing our politics on. And it was like, just see how fast they shut her down when she talked out of the script. Giancarlo, do you have that one to run?
And gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies. It has to do with drug policies. It has to do with environmental
Senator Bennett a question.
As soon as she said it has to do with chemical policies, it has to do with environmental policies, it has to do with food policies, Lester Holt was like, okay, that's enough. We got it. And he talked right over her. And I also enjoyed the fact that she's this sort of petite woman speaking to these 20 dudes. I mean, I know Kamala Harris was also on the stage, but she wasn't pictured in that in that visual. Yeah, and she went on after that to talk about how we need a politics based in love, and it was like they cut her off just as fast as they cut her off from that segment, and then everyone smeared the shit out of her. Whereas Bell Hooks's work is like it's the land, it's the soil from which these ideas are springing, and it's great to see them kind of springing up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even on our democratic stages.
Well, it's incredibly, you think about someone like Bell Hooks, it's like, wow. I mean, we're all better for the fact that she was here and that she could have been pigeonholed into anything, as a lot of activists and thinkers are, right? She could have just focused on feminism or Black feminism, but she sort of rejected the premise that these are all siloed issues. And she rejected it no matter what she was doing, whether it was teaching or writing as prolifically as she did or her activism. She's like, no, this isn't, it's like you were saying, Juliana, like this serves somebody. It serves somebody to have all of us in these disparate silos of resentment. Mm-hmm. But again, the way she does it is just so poetic and inviting. It's really hard and sad to think that, because 69 is not old.
No, it's young.
I mean, think about some of these guys in Congress who are still, flushing our future away in their 80s. It's like, could they maybe like Venmo her some of those years,
Yeah, really. Well, only the good die young is what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep some of those bad habits, people, if you want to live. I have another segment of her, and I'm sorry kind of that I got, that I didn't mean to get us distracted by playing someone else, but I did think there was overlap, and I really wanted to play that in the last segment, but we got off, and here we are. She talks about, this is from the same talk, and oh my gosh, there was other things I wanted to say about that first piece. Did you notice that the guy, it was like when he would speak, he had this sort of man gravitas to his voice, but what he said was just like, so men and women think of love differently. Talk about like that level of that conversation, and then what she did with it. It was just, I was just like mind blown. I don't even know what the hell she was talking about.
Yeah. Well, right. And which is ironic, because that's exactly what she's writing about. That, men are socialized, and obviously all men don't fall for it, but men are socialized to be sort of avoidant, alienated from their emotional selves, and to expect to be humanized, as she said, within the context of a romantic relationship with a woman. Because again, we also have a homophobic society. So it doesn't leave any room for men to be emotionally integrated in their own right, and to not be people who confuse love with violence. And she writes about that with her father a lot. Her father is a man who would beat both her and her mother. And she rejects like the popular, now the internet's like, if he does this, he don't love you. And it's like, you know what? Bell Hooks is like, actually, it's way more complicated than that. We have a society which is violent. It obviously extends into the realm of possibility that people can be violent towards the ones they love, in a world which has become toxic and confused.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She also started that segment out by talking about how love is about giving. And I think that's so interesting, because capitalism is about taking and beating and investing.
Yes.
And we're all part of it every single day. So how do you, spend time in the marketplace and everywhere else in your life, and then come home and have to switch your entire personality?
Yeah.
And, not that you just love in the home or in your family, but, or just give in your home and family. But it does seem like society set up that way. You give and love at home with your family and some of your friends. And then when you're out there, you just, you lose your sense of integrity because you're forced to give it up. It's really interesting that she said that love was really about giving.
I love that you bring that up, because it is fundamentally irrational the way the psychological ideas that are so popular in this culture, right? Like firm boundaries, be professional, be this cold avoidant person, then come home and connect, share, maintain one physical attraction to one person for the rest of your life while not sharing any of your emotions with them. Like these are insanely high standards to hold people. And maybe I don't even want to say high standards. They're just standards that don't really make sense with how humans work.
Inhumane, right? They're not human standards.
Right. And that's what bell hooks is so good at pointing out. Like we can't teach people to go off to war, to compete over resources as a primary goal and to do it, and then come home to their friends and their community and have wonderful social relationships. How does that work?
Actually, in the next segment I have from her, we'll play it in in the next segment I have from her, it's a little bit shorter, but she talks exactly about that. She talks about how well, you'll see. I'll just let her say in her own words. Giancarlo, can you play the next one? Our nation is yearning for love.
For love and community. That people want to know how we can live deeper and more meaningful lives. And the focus on the Dalai Lama, the focus on a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, whom I quote a lot in the book, is we have been looking for those spiritual teachers in our life today who can help us return to love and community. And part of what is interesting about us as a country is that the vast majority of people in this country still say they're Christians, when we know one of the heartbeats of Christianity is the idea that God is love, that we are realized more fully as spiritual beings through love. So the question becomes, if we think this, if this is at the core of our beliefs, why are we not living it out in our actions? And that's a kind of political and spiritual question, because I feel like we have to attend to the needs of the spirit. And one of the things that I would say about the American left is that the American left has never been interested in talking to the needs of the spirit.
Its rhetoric is not loving.
Exactly, and that's part of why the conservative right wing always reaches out more to masses of people, because it acknowledges emotional needs. It acknowledges the needs for family values.
I listen to you, and you're losing your reputation as a radical.
Well,
you're
see, I feel like
about
I'm trying to make radicalism be true to the spirit of itself, which is if you are thinking wrongly, that you have to be willing to change that thinking. I think the left has to begin to talk about love. I mean, was there any more radical movement in our country than civil rights, in the sense that, feminism is radical, but men and women have always lived together. The civil rights movement, the end of a certain kind of white supremacist apartheid, that was about love. And it changed us, and it changed us as a nation for the better. So I don't think that I'm, breaking with that tradition. I'm trying to re-evoke it, because by losing it, we are losing the kind of radical love of justice that has the potential to make this nation be a great nation always, and not be a nation that's false to its own values, false to that notion of really believing in freedom and justice. One of the things I say in the book is that there can be no love without justice.
Well, there you have it. When I heard her say that last night, I was like, exactly. And, having had watched the Marianne Williamson pieces, when I heard her talk about love, and then I saw just how absolutely destroyed she was just pulled through the mud, and just like called a crystal lady. And it was like apostasy about love. And I think that bell hooks is so right about that. It's funny because it seems like the left has the policies, the actions that would be about love. Okay, let's share the wealth around here so that everyone is taken care of, so that everyone is loved, so that everyone's, so that the love of God that quote unquote we all believe in, how they would give it rhetoric on national politics, would be coming to you, delivered directly via our social service. You know what I mean? Like we have the loving policies, but well, not all. I'm not saying I'm saying radicals. I'm not mostly progressives. I don't even want to talk about foreign policy, but generally speaking, we have loving policies, and we never talk about them.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because one thing that I think about a lot is the water we swim in this society stems from the idea that people are not fundamentally valued, right? Everything we have, whether it's you have to have this luxurious career in order to afford basic human needs getting met in a sustainable way, or it's, this genre of literature that she talks about a lot, the self-help books aimed at women, you have to be this type of person to earn communion with another person through partnership. Like, everything is based around this idea that people are not just inherently worthy of value. And that doesn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. We could have a society which looks at individuals as, oh, you know what? If you are a person born on this planet, you have value.
It always gets me that I'm sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, what were you going to say? Sorry.
It always gets me that, like, Fox News, I'm just thinking back to Tuesday's show, like Fox News, we looked at what Fox News and the evangelicals were doing, and how Fox is basically parroting sort of evangelical talking points. I kind of lost my train. That they say, oh, we're the party of Jesus, kind of,
right.
And then they do like hateful things, and they make excuses, and they are vicious, and they support a structure that's vicious, and they are the mouthpiece of a vicious, violent structure. And I don't understand how the followers cannot see that. Could someone explain to me? I mean, I explained it myself on the last show. I just still get mad. My thought about it is that people have been brainwashed to make someone into their guru, their god, their priest, their priestess. Someone has to know more about this than they do. Trusting their inner instinct, their inner judgment is not safe. It's not to be done. Absolutely not. Read this book or that book written by this guy or that guy at some other time. Don't read anything into it. Don't think your own thoughts. Listen to exactly what we say, and that's how you stay safe. And if you veer from this, one, you'll be crucified. Look what we did to that guy. And two, everything will fall apart. Your family will fall apart, blah, 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 whatever the threats are that they have there. So they just teach people to just to not think for themselves and to not trust their inner knowing. Now that if I ever run for office, they're gonna be like, she believes in inner knowing, and that'll be the end of it. They'll clip this segment, Jocelyn, and destroy my career.
I don't want that.
No, but anyway, with that already out there, there's a lot of other segments.
Well, I mean, I love that you bring up the evangelicals, right? Because it is something that I can't get out of my head, is the way this aggressive, stringent, violent religiosity has informed American capitalism, and the way American capitalism informs it. It's like this very vicious cycle of like, oh, you're not going to heaven, which is like not what the Gospels were supposed to be. It was actually supposed to be the complete opposite. Like, you're worthy of love no matter what. It was a very radical notion in ancient.
Yeah, and how about you have to love your brother? And Fox,
yes.
Fox and these other any right-wing outlet out there is basically telling you to hate with a veneer of love. Oh, well, you can tolerate the gays, but they're still wrong, and they're still sinners. It's like, no, everyone is created equal in the eyes of God. And also, I think we have that in our Constitution, except for the boy-lady part, or I think those were in the important pieces was equality, in our country. God, we could talk all day. I mean, I just put 2-minute, 4-minute clips up there, and look at, this is why the depth of her work, the depth of what she did. One of the things I was going to do was just open up her book to any page,
right?
Read a paragraph, and and I did that a few times before this as like a fun kind of exercise.
I kind of thought about that too. I was looking through my Bell Hooks books last night. I was like, but it's just, there's so much. I mean, I do think, the more we're talking, I do think that All About Love is a good starting place for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure. But her first
They're
book,
all good.
Right. Like that's a thing though.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't want to read about love, you can read about class, you can read about race, you
Yeah.
can read about gender, you can read about writing. This book is kind of about writing and alcoholism and creativity and God. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all in here like one big thing.
She just has that. Yeah. I honestly, I never met Bell Hooks. I don't, but she is just clearly such an integrated human being. Like her emotional self and her intellect, it's all together. And what comes out of that is easily like one of the
I even enjoyed watching her speak with Cornell West, because he would say this, and she like, well, no, I don't exactly agree about that. And she didn't pause, or I just really respect her ability, but it wasn't a big like cockfight. You know what I mean? Like there is like the internet is all about cockfights, and look who said this, and then that one said that, and Brianna Joy Gray this, and Jimmy Dore that, and this guy this, and the other one that, and it's it's not, it's just like just the way of talking. Of course, they're both on the same side, obviously, so their disagreements are just
okay. No, but
right.
you know what it is? This is why Bell Hooks is so powerful. A patriarchal view of female power has really succeeded in making a lot of women, I don't even blame them, falling prey to this.
Oh, Jocelyn, you were just about to say something brilliant, and now you're gone. Come back to us.
Oh,
there
no,
you are.
actually,
Oh, you're back. Okay,
I'm sorry.
Please
no, but
do that again.
Basically, like modeling toxic masculinity as feminism, which it isn't, right? Like my goal personally is not to be, the female version of a toxic man. I have no interest in that. And Bell Hooks doesn't accept that paradigm. She's like, yeah, no, women are great as they are. It's the system that's the problem.
It's interesting. It goes back to something that you just said not too long ago within this conversation about how, in order to go out there, you have to button it up and not be so emotional. Well, if women had run everything, men would be reading books about how to emote. Like if you want to be successful in the workplace, you need to emote and share yourself. It's,
and at the very least have, oh, see, look, she's about to say it way better than I am.
Dominator culture has tried to keep us all afraid. Thank you, Giancarlo. I forgot about these. To make us choose safety instead of risk, sameness instead of diversity, moving through that fear, finding out what connects us, reveling in our differences. This is the process that brings us closer, that gives us a world of shared values, of meaningful community. Beautiful.
I love that. And it does make me, like the fight ahead of us is a hard one, because it's like you need to feed your family and you need to have health insurance and you need to do all these things. But what she writes about and based her life around is this idea that what our culture currently demands us is for us to chop off the most pure and human parts of ourselves to engage in that society effectively. And I think that part of the cleanup crew is changing that exchange. Like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have to be cold, competitive, sociopathic people in order to basically have a good, prosperous life.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God. Wait, we have a couple more. Let's show those other ones that you have. There we go. I will not have my life narrowed down. I will not bow down to somebody else's whim or to someone else's ignorance. She must have been exhausted. She must have. Doesn't it feel slightly exhausting to be that way all the time, especially given the current circumstance?
She wrote.
I mean, she died. She's like, I'm done.
Well, and
maybe not. I'm just. Playing.
She wrote her first book at 24, so it's like we really were getting the benefit of a woman who spent her entire life reflecting on these topics, and I don't know. I just think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely. And here's this, our final one. Knowing how to be solitary is central to the art of loving. When we can be alone, we can be with others without using them as a means of escape.
Oh, I love that.
I really love that. We'd say thank you to Bell Hooks. Our condolences to her family, our condolences to ourselves for the great loss, and our condolences to anyone else who's been touched by her work, which, whether you've read it or not, you literally have been touched by her work because she has affected society. You know, Jocelyn, in final word, we were going to discuss on the Act TV like meeting of what we're going to do these shows about this week. We discussed the Elon Musk cover of Time magazine, and we were going to talk about that AI, etc. And then Bell Hooks died, and we scrapped that plan. And I'm so glad we did because, you know, Elon Musk, you know, that the Times cover is not like someone who's great or someone who won an award, etc. It's
Right.
someone who affected people's lives, the greatest number of people's lives over the course of the year or whatever. And I would argue that actually, you know, Bell Hooks and her work and the way it has changed and shifted our society would have been a much better choice for that cover.
I agree. And, you know, I mean, I know we're over, sorry, but I think that if we're going to keep doing this kind of work, whether it's talking about these issues or just being the work of being a human in a very fractured time, like, we need to be able to articulate what we're for, not just what we're against. And I think if she did anything, it was that. In every single book she wrote, she was so adept at talking about the greater parts of being a human being and why they are worth preserving. So that's
well said, Jocelyn. I'm so glad you suggested that we do this, and it was great even just preparing for. I really enjoyed the preparing segment, and yes, and of course, she obviously, her effect and her work lives on, and that's it, I guess. You're watching Act TV. We will be back on Tuesday with, I believe. Oh, Jocelyn, don't leave. No, come back here.
Oh.
We gotta say goodbye. I don't want to just like, you're out of here. Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks for being on the program. I appreciate it as usual.
all right. Bye.
We will now goodbye. Tuesday at 2:00, we're doing our Act TV rundown of the year's topics. So look forward to that. Jocelyn's, you're going to be with us for that, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to be great. Act TV's favorite topics of the year. These are a few of my favorite things. That's what we're going to be doing. Thanks a lot, Jocelyn. See you Tuesday.
Have a lovely day, guys. Bye.
All right. You're watching Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Click, like, act, share, tell people, do things. You can find me on Julianna Forlano on Twitter. You can find Act TV on like every platform. If you're on Insta, we're on Insta. If you like watching Roku channels, we've got one of those. If you're watching, you can watch us on Apple TV. You can go to YouTube. There's even more shows on YouTube that aren't on our Roku channel and everything. So we've got a lot. We're even on Facebook, trying to fight the tide over there. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks to Giancarlo for producing this program. Thanks to anyone who left a comment. I forgot to look. And Giancarlo is so beautiful and kind of shy that he doesn't want to bust in and say, hey, Rose from Detroit said this woman changed my life or whatever. So I will go back and read them myself just so I know where you guys are at. And we will see you on Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching.